Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. I want to thank all of you for joining me. Today's Woodblock Wednesday is kind of an interesting one. Well, I think they're all interesting, of course, but this is one that features 12 prints that are part of the set. It's actually quite rare to see all 12 in one place. They were originally issued together as a set, but like many sets, they sort of get separated from each other or individually sold. And so this is a really interesting, rare opportunity to see a set put together in the early part of the 20th century. And today we'll be talking about the artist Kawanishi. He's a Sosaku Hanga artist. So I guess before I get into all his particular details, what we'll do is I'll flip over and we'll look at the prints on the table and discuss his life and his work. So without further ado, let's have a look at the table. So I'm going to pan out so you could see I have actually I have 12 prints here of Japanese prints by Kawanishi. So as I was saying, Kawanishi is a Sosaku Hanga artist. He's a self-taught artist that produced woodblock prints. And a little bit of his background, his ancestors were actually sake merchants, and they were also associated with a port and some ships, but mostly they were merchants of sake and other alcoholic spirits. And then his immediate family, his parents, owned a post office. And back in the day, post offices were actually individual sort of private enterprises. And then the government sort of bought them out when they established the National Postal Service in Japan. And that basically guaranteed Kawanishi a lifelong appointment as a post office worker. And so basically, he took over the family business. Now, he always wanted to be an artist, and his father really discouraged him from becoming an artist because he wanted him to take over the family business. So he did a little bit of both, actually. He did follow in his father's footsteps and worked in the family business in the postal service. They had their own little branch office that he took over before the government actually took over all of the private post offices and nationalized them. But he basically served as a postal employee for the rest of his life. But he did learn the art of Japanese woodblock printmaking, and his artistic career basically occurred by a chance happening. He was walking around and he saw in a shop in the window a print by Yamamoto Kanae. And we've discussed Yamamoto's work in previous Woodblock Wednesdays. I also discussed his work in my previous seminar on the early years of Sosaku Hanga. So if you haven't seen the last seminar, I encourage you to check that out. And in that seminar, I show the very print that inspired Kawanishi to become a print artist. And so, he was walking around and saw this print in a window, and he learned more about it, and he decided to make prints. And so he picked up chisels and blocks of wood and experimented. And he was, I should say, he started as a painter. But he didn't produce that many paintings, and the early works that he produced in woodblock were in the I'd say about 1920 or so. And the set that we're looking at here is a complete set by Kawanishi. It's basically a calendar set. And what I mean by that is that each design represents a month of the year. And the set is called 12 monthly scenes of Kobe, and it was done in 1931. And the thing about Kawanishi that is actually quite striking, and I think it's very interesting, is by and large, I would say 99.9% of his work focuses on Kobe, in and around Kobe. And he was just fascinated by his hometown, and he was born and raised in that area, and Kobe presented a really interesting opportunity for Kawanishi because Kobe was a cosmopolitan town. And it had people coming in from all parts of the world. He was seeing fashion, he was seeing other things coming in all at once from different countries, and that just fascinated him. And so his prints really showcase Kobe and how lively it is and how cosmopolitan, and it has this lust for life. He's really interested in nightlife and city scenes, in people who are living life in the most modern way. And so I'm going to talk about all of these prints, and I'm going to highlight how these subjects really speak to his influences. And his main influence really is the city of Kobe itself, as I mentioned. And so it's interesting when you find an artist who's just captivated by one theme. And for him, it was the region that he was from. And he was fortunate, besides Kobe being such a rich and diverse town for Japan, also it's gifted with such natural beauty around the city. And so in any direction, in 10, 15 minutes, you could be around wonderful hillsides, and it's basically kind of the countryside, at least at the time that he was living there. And so he showcases all kinds of different aspects of Kobe, and then the region around it. And then I should also point out that these prints were the very first prints he produced in this format, and he's most known for his crowning achievement of 100 scenes of Kobe, and that was done between 1933 and 1936. And basically, in that time, he produced 100 prints. Actually, they number more than 100, but the title is 100 Views of Kobe. And again, these prints are basically considered a dry run for the series that he went on to create. So this is a really cool opportunity to see early work by Kawanishi that obviously anticipates his larger series showcasing Kobe. So, I'll just start off by showing this really neat exhibition. um, it's actually a folder that has his signature in his hand, the title with the months listed, and the title of the series, the months listed in Japanese, and the scenes. And of course, this is the cover of the folder, and this is original. It's nice to have with the complete set. And so, I actually I'll start with this print, for example. So, and forgive me, they're not in order. And I didn't really look them up to decide which one was January, February, and so on. So I kind of just laid them out, but there is an order to it. And so on this design, what we see is this group of people. We have women dressed in kimonos, men in kimonos, but also the men are wearing Western hats, which is kind of interesting. You see the influence of the West in that way. And then what do we have here? But also these Western cars. I mean, they're really neat. I mean, these are cars from, again, this is from the early 30s. So this design showcases Japan, or Kobe in particular, in the way that you would have encountered it at the time. There's no, the artist is not trying to make an idea in sort of a scene that's idyllic and nostalgic that you might see done by other artists, particularly in Shinhanga. This artist, being part of the Sosaku Hanga school, carved and printed this print himself, and he wanted to show a direct engagement with his his life, what Japan looked like, particularly Kobe, when he lived there in the early 30s. So this was a typical scene. Um, and I'll come in and I'll zoom in. And so yeah, we saw Michael just chimed in. Hello, nice to see you. He says that the amazing colors, they're different from Yoshida colors, and that's correct. Kawanishi, that's a great point, and I'll point that out right now since you brought it up. Kawanishi was sort of interested in primary colors. He was influenced in many ways by foreign posters coming into Japan. And often in some of his designs, he actually even used poster pigments in his larger scale prints. But in these designs, he was influenced by these primary colors, the brightness and the vividness of these colors. He saw them as very lively, and they helped animate his designs with a certain sort of it's like a life, it's these colors that animate the designs. And so you could see how the yellows and the bright greens and the reds really do bring life to these designs. And in this particular design, it's a night scene, but these colors and the way that he's focused the yellows like sort of around the horizon line where the eye focuses, it looks like light coming in from the shops. And of course, light being produced by the lights in the cars. So again, these colors really work in concert with the design. Now I'll point out this design here again. His use of color is brilliant. And overhead, we have lights or lanterns, but it's the lights or it's the color in the people's clothing that really provide the scene, and the lighting that illuminates the clothing from overhead is sort of is more kind of a decorative effect of shapes, but it's the colors on the bottom there that really animate the design. And so here we have, this is probably June or July, assuming it's a summer month because everyone's at the lakeside. So we have all of these figures sunbathing, and you could see they're dressed in the swim attire from the 30s. It's really neat. And of course, Kawanishi being a Sosaku Hanga artist, one that was influenced by Yamamoto Kanai, he did not like outlines of black that were found in ukiyo-e. So he was more of a fan of printing color on top of color and carving out aspects of the design and leaving voids or having color printed over. And you see how the color, the red here, is printed over the yellow. And here, this is just this void of white, but no lines that create an outline. So here, these figures in the lake, there's no black outline that creates the figures. It's just the shape of them carved out directly. And moving back to this design, you see we don't see the black outline that we see in Shinhanga or ukiyo-e. So I'll move across the other designs so that everyone gets to see uh, just how wonderful these designs are. Kawanishi certainly had a very distinctive style. In Shinhanga, of course, Yoshida and Hasui, their prints are different, and you could easily identify them. But at the same time, by and large, they're closer to each other than, say, other Sosaku Hanga artists were to each other. In Kawanishi's work, is quite different from other artists. Is his choice of color, but is also his compositions focused on both lively scenes of the city, in and out of the city, or these idyllic sort of jaunts out into the countryside or at parks. This looks like a park to me. Here's a bridge. Right here, there's a waterfall coming down. and there might be water there. These are, this is kind of interesting. These look like sailors, and I don't know if they're Western sailors. They almost kind of remind me of American styled uniforms from, the Navy or something. So it's interesting. We do see that in his post-war designs, where you see Americans walking around in their uniforms. Now, I'll point out this scene. This is a really cool scene. Again, Kobe, and there's these people on rickshaws that he often depicted. But what you have here is also foreigners. There's these two foreigners, and they have these hats that remind me they're probably Moroccan, at least in style. The hats that they have, and then of course there's this gentleman here is smoking a pipe, and they're talking to each other. And then who knows who the other people are and where they're from. This guy in the center there looks like a sailor again. And so he was really interested in showing the diversity of the people coming in and out of Kobe. And these, sorry, I think I lost you guys with my connection. So these designs really highlight his interest in diversity in the population, in diversity of like style and fashion. And so they're just so neat to be able to see, and it's astonishing that they're from the early 30s, quite frankly. So I'm just kind of jumping around. I don't think I showed this one. So this one, there's all sorts of people enjoying and a really wonderful walk around. This might be cherry blossom season. The the tree is in full bloom and people are out strolling, enjoying the scene here. And I just love how he depicted this woman's profile there. You really do get a sense of movement and how Kawanishi carved the block, how he added the colors, and of course his color choice. All of those work in concert with each other to provide such a animated scene. And in this case, I want to point out, you see these lines here? That I think is an artifact of the influence of posters. And of course, Nicole, as I mentioned early, he was influenced by Western posters coming into Japan, and especially by the color use uh, in those posters, or how posters were created. And so he used primary colors quite a bit, most of the time, to produce his designs. But he also kind of created these kind of lines that kind of give a sense of, yes, they echo the fact that they're woodblock prints, but they also kind of have a graphic quality that I think he's connecting to something larger, beyond woodblock prints, and more into sort of maybe commercial types of prints. So just throwing that out there. These other, I haven't shown you these, the last two columns. There's a beautiful hill here, and then the colors sort of animate the landscape as the eye moves forward here. And this design is quite nice. It's a night scene with a full moon that's illuminating the water as the people walk around. That's quite nice. We just had a full moon, so I think he did a great job capturing that scene. And then here we have a scene of people walking around again, out in the park. So they're dressed very differently. Here, I believe these two look quite like, to me, they look foreign. And then we have a woman in a kimono with a parasol. This guy in the center looks foreign to me again. And so this scene is a mix of natives from Kobe enjoying a day out. There's it might be evening because this looks like fireworks actually. But the sky is not yet quite dark, so it's probably dusk. But it's again another example of Kawanishi's interest in showcasing foreigners in Japan, which was different. Most Well, certainly the government for generations was very anti-immigration and anti-opening the doors of Japan to the West. But at this time in the 30s, certainly there were people coming in, and Kawanishi really wanted to celebrate the diversity and the people coming into Kobe and visiting. Here, we have a really wonderful snow scene of people skiing slopes in the mountains right near Kobe, actually. And what I should point out is that skiing was very popular. It picked up popularity in the Taisho era, and then, of course, in the 30s, people were really into skiing. It was an imported sport, of course, and so so his interest in something foreign really comes through. But at the same time, you there was a lot of artists producing prints showing skiing and boxing and other sports of the 30s, partly because the Olympics were going to be held in Japan. And so there was interest in all these foreign sports. And here, this last one, we have all these people walking around again. This looks like a park of sorts. And then there's banners there. So all of his designs are active engagements with the natural landscape and the cityscapes that he was encountering. He did not change them. He really wanted to celebrate the modernity of the city. There's buildings, there's all kinds of telephone poles and electrical poles and wiring. And these scenes aren't necessarily scenes that you would see in Shinhanga. And again, I just wanted to highlight how different in some ways these prints are, and considering that were produced at the very same time. So I'm just going to stop talking for a moment, and I'm just going to pan over the prints one last time so you can enjoy them. Now, the format of these prints, I should point out, the size of them are not full Oban size prints. And so it's upsize that basically Kawanishi sort of invented for his prints. They're larger than Ibon size, but they're not really Chuban. They're sort of in between. And though I would say that these designs are slightly larger than the prints that he later went on to produce for his 100 Scenes of Kobe. So this series of 12 prints was, like I said earlier in my talk, it was a dry run in him sort of working out the kinks so that he was able and prepared to produce 100 scenes of Kobe, which is an astonishing feat considering, as I said, he was a postal service employee. I think he even became a postmaster at some point, but that was his job, and so he made these prints sort of as an amateur. He was not producing prints in quantity, and in this case, I don't know how many sets survive. I'm only aware of maybe about six or eight. And there's a couple in private collections, and then there's some in museums. The museum in Pittsburgh, the Art Museum in Pittsburgh, the Carnegie, has a complete set. but there aren't that many. And so because he wasn't a professional artist, making his living selling his art, he didn't produce as much. And the last thing I'll say about his 100 Scenes of Kobe, this book illustrates the entire series, including this series. And this is a book that I have in my on my website, in my bookstore, if you're interested in it. But he he produced 100 prints, obviously, actually more for this series, but he didn't produce them in quantity. I believe only two complete sets of the 100 scenes of Kobe exist, as far as we know. And in each impression or each design, he may have only created a handful of each design. He printed them by request. I know that he made one complete set as a set, but and maybe produced another one as a set. But the point is, he just made the designs individually. They were not issued as sets, and so they were sold as designs or were desired. And so he'd make, let's say for example, he'd make one of these and then sold it, and then he'd make another one and another one and another one. But it's not clear to me, and nor is it clear to anyone really, how many impressions he made of each design. So the set and a lot of those designs are quite rare. You might see a few designs over and over again, but on the whole, this series is quite rare, as is this. So I wanted to point that out for connoisseurs who are interested in Kawanishi, who might be interested in collecting his work, that it's actually quite hard to find out in the wild, as we say. And you also have to be careful because there are some prints that were reprinted by the family, and it's not that easy to tell. You just have to learn the feel of the paper, and also and the look of the colors, and also the sizing of the paper. And I can talk about that offline. If people have questions about that, I'd be happy to address them. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to give an overview of his body of work here, especially this early period, and then just sort of discuss, what he went on to produce. One last thing. This group of prints, because it was a trial run for him, a lot of these prints have hand colorations, not just a printed. There are colors that are printed, but he also went in and hand colored certain aspects of these prints. So these prints are printed with a woodblock print, but also embellished with color at the end. He wasn't satisfied in certain areas, and so he hand applied color. And so I find that really fascinating. It also shows you his sort of his hands-on approach to making these prints. They weren't just prints for him, they were his works of art that he worked so hard on after hours, after he got home from a long day at the post office. So, that gives us sort of a sense of his body of work, the man, the character of his artistic sort of temperament and how he created these prints. And so, anyway, I think this is a great example. It's quite rare, and it's a delight to be able to share this with all of you. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me today on Woodblock Wednesday. I hope you enjoyed a brief consideration of Hide Kawanishi's work. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments below, and I'd be happy to address them or private message me. If you have other questions or comments about other things that I may have done, of course, all of my videos are archived on my website, collectingjapaneseprints.com, under Woodblock Wednesday, or under my events for my seminars. So there's two big videos in my seminars. One I just held a couple weeks ago, so feel free to check that out. And then, of course, I'm constantly adding things to the website, and I'm working on a big exhibition for June with some wonderful things. So keep an eye out for that as well. So thank you again for joining me on Woodblock Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye bye.